from my own personal experience, I've done some business development, and the way that you kind of get trained is to get on the phone and just send out loads of marketing messages. And I think that was an old school technique, um, but doing something else is quite difficult. So, for people, do you think that's the best approach? Is this how you should position yourself, by sending out email messages, making cold calls? Do you think this is a successful route for a consultant?
It's a common refrain that we hear from consultants who come to us looking for help is they often say, well, I just want to get on the phone with more people, or, pre-COVID, I just want to get into more meetings. If I could just get in front of more prospects, everything would be better. And it's not a bad question, but it's a misplaced question, because assuming that you're selling to a relatively busy person, right? And people with money tend to be busy, by the way.
Yeah.
Business owner, decision maker, department head, executive, the people who have the authority and the resources available to sign checks with your name on them, they're not really sitting around waiting for you to call. Yeah, they're not throwing themselves at you yet, right? So they're busy. And one of the core tenets of our approach that we teach clients is you have to front load belief in the mind of the prospect. So that question is misplaced where people say, well, if I just got in front of more people, I close more deals. Well, you're not going to get in front of more people unless you give them a good reason to engage you. You've got a front load belief, right? So that's, I find, a pretty common, call that a mindset issue more than anything else. It's a strategic error. Is just get in front of more people, things will be amazing, but you're not going to get in front of more people unless you give that busy decision maker a reason to have a conversation with you and to engage you. We call that front loading belief.
Okay, so that's quite a challenge for people to get that mindset in place, isn't it? Because all the training that they may have received in the past is teaching them one thing that you're saying is not quite accurate. So how do you get yourself as a consultant into that mindset?
I mean, the real challenge is intellectual laziness. That's
Okay.
the real challenge, right? Because it's easier to just say, well, I'm just going to spam my market with these emails and these calls and these messages, and I'm going to play a numbers game. And if the numbers work out, then everything's going to be fine. And, there's truth to that this is a numbers game if you have your positioning and your messaging dialed in. And if you don't, it's not a numbers game, it's a losing game. Right. So
Sure.
That's the real issue is that intellectual laziness. And look, in every market, there's going to be people that just want the easy way out. They want the easy button. They're intellectually lazy. They don't want to pursue the path of resistance. And the path of resistance is figuring out what in the world do I stand for, and why should people care, and what's compelling about what I do, and how do I evoke a response? That's hard. That's intellectually challenging. It's going to make you actually think about the value that you provide to the marketplace and your expertise and what makes it scarce and what makes it compelling. That's not easy. It's easier to spam people, right? Now, if you are the kind of person that is willing to do the intellectually challenging work of defining all of that, the good news to you is most people are lazy and they're not going to do it. And they're going to be spammers, and you're going to look really good compared to them.
Yeah, it's interesting because I've experienced it myself. My background was in recruitment, and you're told get on the phone some more. If it's not working, get on some phone some more. Get on the phone some more. But the more I see people on LinkedIn providing value, and the more I'm interacting myself personally with those people because I've built up that trust with them, the more I realize this is the technique. This is the way forward. So, in your mind, what are the main avenues you can start to build trust with potential clients?
Well, I want to actually just call out one other thing to your previous question that I think is important to note. A lot of this thinking around it's a numbers game and just do the outreach and just, more dials, more messages, and more of this, that, and the other. Yeah. It comes from a sales mindset, right? It comes from trainers and methodologies and organizations that make a living training professional salespeople. And for the professional salesperson, it's not the best advice, but it's also not terrible advice. But if you're a consultant, if you're an expert, if you're some kind of B2B service provider, you want to be positioned as a trusted advisor, it's about the worst advice in the world. Because when you go out and you spam people and you send out generic messages and you make generic cold calls and you're just desperate to get on the phone with somebody, what does that say about you? That says you got nothing better to do. Go out and spam people. Therefore, you must not be very good at what you do, because if you were, you wouldn't need to do any of that. Right. And so that advice, is worth calling out where that comes from. It comes from a sales mindset, right? It comes from advice that's typically directed at professional salespeople, commissioned salespeople, for whom that's probably not the worst advice. But if you're a consultant and you make money based on your expertise and the purveying of your expertise, it's terrible advice.
Yeah. I think especially as a lot of consultants with a specific expertise aren't comfortable making those calls, right? It's actually hard to pick up the phone in the first place and try and get through to somebody, let alone then sell to them on the phone. It's not comfortable for everybody. So I think
It's a
what you're
recipe
saying,
for failure. It's a recipe for failure, right? Because consultants and experts are people that, by definition, take great pride in their expertise and the value that they create in the marketplace. And there's nothing more damaging to your mindset as a consultant than to talk to people who are not a good fit for what you do. And cold calling is an extreme example of that, right? I mean, there's other ways that manifests. Cold calling is one extreme example. Another example is just talking to prospects that just don't have the need, and people do that too, right? Anybody that, let's talk, if you have a pulse and a wallet, we'll have a discovery call.
Yeah.
Right. And then you end up talking to a lot of people that don't actually have a need for your services, don't have the problem that you solve. And look, after a while, you talk to 10, 15, 20 people that don't have a need, and you start to wonder, maybe nobody needs my help. Maybe the market is free of problems. Maybe I'm solving a problem that doesn't exist. And that may not be the case, but you're talking to people that don't have the problem that you solve. And if I'm in a room that's painted blue, and all the walls are blue and all I see is blue, and I'm in that room 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, I sometimes I forget red exists and purple exists and yellow exists. All I see is blue, right? And that can be very damaging to your mindset as a consultant or a service provider. Is cold calling to an extreme, absolutely, but more accurately, it's talking to people that are a bad fit and don't have the problem that you solve. That's going to kill your mindset.
Yeah, it's an uphill battle, isn't it? But in both instances, you're trying to overcome a challenge to find that one little nugget in this great mass of just activity. It's wasting your time, I guess, isn't it? And it reminds me of the videos that you share on LinkedIn of the guy trying to sell consultancy on the street. It's really impactful way to show what a lot of people do, especially when it's consulting. Nobody wants just random people coming up to them shouting, "Hey, buy this off me." It doesn't work, does it? So I just want to go back to that question I asked earlier about, so what channels can consultants go down to actually get their message heard? Because typically when we've asked people what sort of areas of marketing have you gone down to find new clients or develop new business, it's networking, it's referrals, or it's email marketing. So are those the main avenues that you would consider as being successful avenues, or are there more that can be tapped into?
Yeah, I mean, for the average consultant that's kind of starting out and trying to get their bearings around marketing and business development and lead generation, typically we recommend 2 channels. And we're doing a whole bunch of stuff outside of these 2 channels, but the starting point is the following 2. One is LinkedIn, 2 is referrals, but there's a spin on referrals I'm going to talk to that's very important to call out. So in terms of LinkedIn is powerful because one is you can pull up a list of prospects, leads, accounts that are representative of your target market. You got to know who you're targeting, first of all, because if your market is everybody, we often get people that come to us and say, well, we ask who's your target market, and they say, well, it's small businesses. Oh, great, that's like 80% of the economy. Oh, that's very helpful. Okay, great, let's just go and find small businesses, right? That's not a market. But assuming you know who your market is, who you're targeting, LinkedIn's the fastest way to build a list of who they are by name, by company, by role, by persona, right? And it's the most effective and fastest and efficient way to build a network of them. But build a network that's not premised on, hey, let me tell you something. That's just kind of silly because, again, they don't know who you are. Yeah. And they don't necessarily have the problem that you solve. Why would you sell somebody something if they don't need it? It's kind of silly, right? In medicine, they call that malpractice. When a doctor prescribes before they diagnose, they call that malpractice, and they lose their license. In consulting, it's the norm. All these consultants go around selling things to people who don't actually need what they're selling. And it's silly at best and dangerous and irresponsible at worst, right? So you connect and engage with the market at scale, premised on creating value and providing insights if it's relevant to the market. And rule of thumb is only 1 to 3% of your market is in a buying position. Really simple, right? Everybody else is just not looking to buy something right now, and prove me wrong that your market is different. That's the case for every market. 1 to 3% is actually in a buying position right now. Bigger percentage may be there in 3 to 6 months. Even bigger percentage, not going to be there anytime soon. Don't care. So if you're wasting your time trying to sell to everybody, well, that's why it's not working, because 1 to 3% actually need something right now. Everybody else doesn't. But LinkedIn as a channel provides you with an opportunity to get in front of more people, engage them in a conversation, build a relationship for the long term, right? That creates value, that builds rapport, that builds trust. At the end of the day, trust is still the X factor. I don't work with somebody that I don't trust. It's really simple. Yeah. I don't trust you. I don't care how smart you are or how good you look or how great your marketing. If I don't trust you, I'm not going to work with you. So LinkedIn, and I mean, social media at large, but if you're selling B2B, LinkedIn is kind of hard to ignore, and it's kind of foolish to put your focus anywhere else, is this massive opportunity to engage and build a network and nurture that network and build trust and credibility and authority at scale, which is really, really crazy, right? When you think about it, a lot of our clients come to us and they say, well, I'm really good when I get in front of somebody, like we talked about earlier, right? Get me in a meeting and I can convey authority. I can convey expertise, right? Well, the opportunity that most people are neglecting is you could do that at scale if you know how to play the channel properly, right? You could, we got on the phone today. We've never met before, right? But how many times have you seen my face in your feed?
Yeah, all the time, constantly.
You're thinking too many. I mean, I can't. I'm dreading to have this conversation. I feel like I've already talked to you enough, and I've heard everything you have to say, right? But that didn't cost me anything in terms of my time. Right? I didn't spend incremental time talking to you one-on-one, and there's thousands of people that are seeing me in their feed because I'm nurturing them at scale, and that's the big opportunity. What if you could nurture hundreds and eventually thousands of people at scale, as opposed to limiting yourself to these one-to-one interactions where they may or may not be a good fit? And that's the opportunity behind a platform like LinkedIn, social media at large. But again, if you're selling B2B, LinkedIn's where the play is.
Yeah, it certainly is a powerful tool. But I guess that then brings on the next challenge for people in a consultancy role. It's how do you create that content, especially when you feel like you need to be doing something to develop business. And again, if you've got that sales mindset in place, it's quite difficult to think, right, I'm actually going to sit down and create content that's going to build this trust and build this position for me with clients. So how would you advise kind of to look at doing that, if you don't mind sharing?
So 2 common challenges that we find people face here is, one, they don't know what to talk about. And 2, they don't know how to create content that accelerates the sales process and the buyer's journey. And I'll tackle those one at a time. If you don't know what to talk about, that's not a content problem, that's a positioning problem. Okay. If you don't know what to publish, then chances are you don't really know where you stand in the marketplace and what makes you distinct and what makes your offer compelling and what your clients' pain points are and where they're struggling and why they should care. That's positioning. It's not content. Because if you knew all of that, what to say, what to publish about, what to talk about, what insights to share, it becomes kind of obvious. All that stuff. Talk about that. Right. And we have methodologies and frameworks around this to make it really easy for our clients, but that's it in a nutshell. When positioning is clear, content strategy, publishing, thought leadership becomes kind of straightforward. It's not terribly complicated. Now, that said, there's different types of content that serve people at different stages of the buyer's journey. right? There are folks who are earlier on in the buying process, not quite looking for a solution right now. And if you force a solution down their throats, they're going to choke on it.
Yeah.
Okay. Don't do that. They want insights. They want short snippets of wisdom, tips, different ways of thinking about business problems that you solve, to convey to them that you are somebody who's an authority on the topic and who has expertise, so that when they are in a buying position, you top of mind. They think of you. They go to you, right? So here's a really interesting stat to think about is Google and the CEB did this very large study of B2B transactions. What they found was that the average B2B buyer is 58% through their decision-making process before they ever contact a vendor. What does that mean? 58% through their decision-making process before they contact a vendor. That means that they've more than half made up their minds before they ever talk to you.
It's amazing,
so
isn't it?
to our previous point about if I can just get in front of people, well, that's too late. By the
Yeah.
time you get in front of them, by the time they're willing to have the conversation with you, they've more than half made up their minds. Now you're an order taker. Now you're a vendor. And they go, well, can you do this? And you go, sure. And they go, well, can you do it for cheaper? And you say, sure, because you have no authority now. You have no leverage. You're an order taker. They made up their minds. They want you to fill an order. You know, if that's the kind of business you want, good for you. It's not what I want, right? So the point being that there needs to be content top of funnel that helps the buyer better understand the problem that they're facing, wrap their head around it, that engages them with insights, so that when they get to the point where they're ready to make a decision, they're ready to engage a vendor, consultant, expert, service provider, you're top of the list because A, you've been showing up, and a few others have in your market, and B, you've actually shaped the way they see the problem and subconsciously steered them towards your solution. So you've essentially created a buyer. You've created a customer. Marketing is fundamentally education. And I have a background in education, so that's why I think this way. Marketing is fundamentally education. You have a prospect that has certain beliefs, worldviews, expectations, desires, and you need to get them to a certain point in those beliefs and those worldviews around the problem that they're facing and the solution to be able to do business with you. And marketing is just educating them to get them to that point. And when they do, they buy.
Yeah. I guess a lot of buyers don't even know they need your solution until they're educated on that service or what that can do for their business. So it's really interesting what you're saying there, because the person who's just making that phone call, who's just picking up a call or dropping one email through and hoping for a win, why are they going to say yes? They're not going to, are they? They're not educated on that topic or that solution to the pain that they've got. Marketing the way that you're talking there, or positioning the way that you're talking there, you're selling to them without them even knowing it, really, aren't you? It's quite interesting. Yeah.
And you're adopting the expert frame, right? Because you're educating, you're providing value in advance of a transaction. And so what happens is the more that your market and your prospects engage with your material, the more value they extract from your advice. Before money ever changes hands, the more indebted they feel to you. This is the law of reciprocity, one of Cialdini's triggers, right? Reciprocity. That the more you give me without asking for anything in advance, the more I feel indebted to you. I want to reciprocate, right? And that reciprocation ultimately takes the form of an engagement. I've already learned so much from you. You've already helped me so much in better understanding the problems that we're facing, challenges that we're facing. And now I feel a sense of obligation towards you to engage you, or at the very least, give you a call and have a conversation, see how you can help us. Might not be enough to get you the deal. It's going to get you the conversation if you do it right.
Yeah. In terms of referrals and networking, you said you had something you wanted to talk about on that subject earlier.
That's right. Yeah, thank you. So LinkedIn and going direct to your market and building out those relationships at scale and providing value, that's one channel. The second channel, which can also be operationalized via LinkedIn, is what we call predictable referrals. Okay, predictable referrals. So here's an opportunity that most consultants, B2B service providers are neglecting to their own peril. Is the clients that you want all have pre-existing relationships with other service providers, experts, consultants, software companies, vendors. They have those relationships. They exist. And if you can turn those relationships that they have, the trust they already have with those other vendors and suppliers and firms, and leverage those to catapult you into deals that are a perfect fit for you at the perfect time, what you do is you train a team of silent salespeople. That's what we call them. Referral sources become like silent salespeople. They know who you are. They know what you do. They know the value you provide. You've struck a win-win deal with them to refer deals to you. And when a deal comes across their desk, they go, this is perfect for Ed. Ed would knock this out of the park. And when I bring Ed in to this client, and when I recommend Ed to this client, I know Ed's going to deliver. He's going to knock it out of the park, and I'm going to look like a hero. And the client's going to love me, and it's going to strengthen my relationship with the client. And maybe you give me a cut of the deal too. That's fine. There's lots of ways to incentivize, right? But the point is, all the clients that you want have relationships. So you do want to go directly to the clients and build those relationships on your own. That's important. But why not also scale your relationships with the referral source? And that's the piece here that people miss out on. Is a lot of folks have done well with referrals, but they've done referrals passively, right? There's no way to go out and get the referrals. They just wait for them to come to them. And at best, they'll send some emails and say, do you know anybody? Well, that's a terrible tactic, right? Because yes, I know people. So what, right? But how many consultants are going out, apart from my clients, and deliberately building predictable referral networks at scale? And just do the math, right? Let's say you have, let's say you have 10 referral sources right now, and each of them sends you one deal per year, right? And you get 10 deals per year from your referral network. Well, what if you had 50? That's 50 deals.
It becomes a lot easier, doesn't it?
Now, are they out there? Absolutely. Can you reach them? Absolutely. Is there a win-win proposition to be made? Absolutely.
Sure, yeah.
Are you lazy? Maybe. So maybe you won't do it, right? But that's your problem.
But it's a different way to look at business development again, isn't it? Or lead generation. It's rather than going down that one route, it's looking at the other avenues, the other opportunities for people to develop trust in you without even having to speak to you directly. They can hear from you with content, or they can hear from somebody else how good this person is. So it sounds easier,
Now, the bedrock of all
this, it's hard work, but it seems easier.
Yeah, and the bedrock of all this is strong positioning. The marketplace needs to know where you stand. They need to know who you serve. They need to know what scarce expertise you provide that they can't get anywhere else. But your referral sources need to know that too, because they're not going to refer you in unless they know that you're going to knock it out of the park and that you're a great fit to work with their client, and that they can't get that expertise in very many other places. So positioning is the bedrock of all this. But when positioning is really clear, really compelling, we call it power positioning is our framework, then not only does the market respond better, but the referral sources respond better as well.
Yeah, it's interesting. So when you talk about power positioning, are you talking about just saying I'm niche within a particular subject, or I'm niche within a particular sector? How does that kind of break down or play out?
So power positioning is fundamentally about the laws of supply and demand. So we have a mechanism around this that we train our clients on, but really it comes down to fundamental economics, supply and demand. Okay. You choose a market that's big and that's hungry. Lots of clients out there who have the problem that you solve. Okay. Big market, small markets, tough to really differentiate in because they're small, right? Big market, hungry market, large demand. Okay. But then you have your suppliers, you have your competitors. So picture like that supply and demand graph from Economics 101. Okay. You have a demand curve, you have a supply curve. And what happens is where the supply curve meets the demand curve, the price is set, right? There's only a certain price the market's going to bear. If you try to charge a price higher than that equilibrium between supply and demand, the market won't bear it, because why would they? They're going to go to another supplier, so I can get this for cheaper elsewhere. They're not going to entertain your premium price unless you shift the supply curve. So if you picture that graph, maybe you're following, maybe you're not. Right?
Yeah. I am.
Take my word for it. You are. I'm thinking about the listener. You shift that supply curve to the left. How? By drawing out the distinction in what you do as compared to the alternatives. And to be able to say, well, actually, I'm not like those other suppliers. It's not the same thing. We don't deliver the same expertise. This is meaningfully different for these reasons. And yes, those alternatives exist, but they're not a good fit for you for these reasons. Now you shift the supply curve by constraining the alternatives available to the client. They can no longer compare you to them, and you command a premium price. But more than that, you have power, you have control, because now clients need you more than you need them. And that's what happens when we nail power positioning is they can't say to you, oh, we can go and get this elsewhere. No, you can't. I can go find another client like you and serve them, but you can't find somebody else like me. Who has power now? So just the other day, we had a prospect come to us, and he wants to work with us, and this is a fairly large firm, and I quoted him a fairly large price. And he goes, "Okay, well, that sounds great, but I'm going to negotiate." And I said, "You can try, and I won't fault you for trying." But the reality is, I literally told him, supply and demand. We have lots of people applying to work with us. We can't work with everybody. So if our price doesn't work for you, we wish you all the best, and we take no offense whatsoever, but we will go down the list and work with the next one. And what does that do to change the dynamic of the relationship? Who's in charge now?
Yeah, completely changes it, doesn't it? It's instead of begging or asking for something from the client, you're now saying, well, you want it from me. Well, cool. Let's work on my terms then. It's yeah, it makes a lot of sense. It's really good. So Ahmed, I think we've probably got quite a lot from you here, unless there was anything you wanted to specifically talk about or cover at all in this conversation. I think what you've said has been spot on, succinct. It's been really interesting and engaging. But is there anything you wanted to cover outside of what we've spoken about so far?
No, I think that's pretty comprehensive. If folks want to learn more, they can always go to our website, boutique.com, or grab some of our free training at 90daypipeline.com. There's a wealth of information and resources available for free, nothing to buy, nothing to pay for, that you might find valuable. So go ahead and check those out.
Perfect. Thank you very much.